Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why, in a world filled with endless opportunities, technology, and comfort, so many people still wake up every morning feeling empty inside? Why do people with wealth, fame, and everything society tells us equals happiness still feel unfulfilled, restless, even broken? The truth is, most people are chasing happiness in places it doesn't exist, outside of themselves. They've been conditioned to believe the next achievement, the next relationship, the next dollar, the next possession will finally fill that void. But what if I told you that true happiness isn't about getting more? It's about unlocking something within you that most people never even realize they already have. Stay with me, because once you understand this, your entire life can shift in a way you never imagined. And why do most people never feel truly happy? It's not because they're missing something outside of themselves. It's not because they don't have the right car, the perfect partner, the bigger house, or the recognition from the world. Most people never feel truly happy because they've built a pattern of tying happiness to conditions. They've trained themselves to believe, I'll feel happy when I get there, when I achieve this, when people see me a certain way. And the truth is, happiness doesn't live in the future. Happiness doesn't live in the approval of others. Happiness lives in this very moment, but most people have never been taught how to unlock it. And think about it. As children, you were happy without needing a reason. You'd laugh at a game, smile at the smallest things, and find joy in the present moment. But as you grew older, the world conditioned you. You were told to achieve more, to be more, to prove yourself. Suddenly, happiness became conditional. You began to measure yourself against impossible standards. You learned to compare your life with others. And comparison is the thief of joy. And most people never feel truly happy because they are living in a prison of when. When I lose weight, then I'll feel confident. When I make more money, then I'll feel secure. When I find the right person, then I'll feel complete. But life doesn't work that way. If you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. The mind is always moving the finish line. You think you're chasing happiness, but in reality, you're chasing a mirage. And once you arrive at what you thought would fulfill you, the mind immediately creates a new condition. And the truth is, most people are addicted to stress, struggle, and dissatisfaction. They've wired their nervous system to find what's wrong instead of what's right. Their focus is tuned to problems rather than possibilities. They don't realize happiness is a habit, a muscle that has to be trained. It's not about pretending life is perfect. It's about mastering your focus. Whatever you focus on, you feel. If you constantly focus on what's missing, you'll always feel empty. But if you train yourself to focus on what's already beautiful in your life, you will feel an unshakable sense of joy. And happiness is not something you pursue, it's something you generate. It's a state you choose, not a prize you earn. The people who never feel truly happy are the ones who give their power away. They let external circumstances dictate their internal state. They let the weather, their bank account, or someone else's mood determine how they feel. They hand over the keys of their happiness to forces outside their control. But lasting happiness can only come when you reclaim that power, when you decide that no matter what happens, your state is your choice. And most people never feel happy because they confuse pleasure with fulfillment. Pleasure is temporary. It's surface level. It's the high from a new purchase, the rush of likes on social media, the thrill of success. But fulfillment is deeper. It's lasting. It feeds your soul. Fulfillment comes from growth and contribution. When you're growing, when you're giving, when you're making life about something greater than yourself, that's when real happiness is unlocked. And think about it. How many people do you know who have everything you thought would make someone happy? Wealth, fame, admiration, yet they feel empty inside. Because the human spirit won't be satisfied with things alone. It craves meaning. It craves growth. It craves giving. Without those, people will always feel like something is missing, no matter how much they achieve. And the reason most people never feel truly happy is because they chase a life of comfort instead of a life of purpose. Comfort can make you feel safe, but it will never make you feel alive. True happiness comes from breaking through your limitations, from facing challenges, from knowing you are becoming more than you were yesterday. It comes from connecting deeply with others, not just on the surface, but from a place of love, authenticity, and service. And here's the paradox. The very things most people avoid are the things that would actually make them happy. They avoid discomfort, but discomfort is the birthplace of growth. They avoid risk, but risk is the doorway to possibility. They avoid vulnerability, but vulnerability is the gateway to love. So they live a life of protection instead of expression, and in doing so, they shut themselves off from the very experiences that bring the deepest joy. And you want to know why most people never feel truly happy? Because they're living someone else's story. They're following a script handed down by society, by their parents, by their peers. They're chasing goals that don't even belong to them. They're trying to live up to an image instead of living into their truth. Happiness will never come from fitting into someone else's expectations. It only comes from aligning with your authentic self. When your daily occasions match who you really are and what you truly value, happiness flows effortlessly. And most people don't take the time to discover who they are at their core. They know what the world expects of them, but they don't know what their soul longs for. So they climb a ladder their entire life only to realize at the top it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's why happiness feels elusive. It's not because it's far away. It's because they've been climbing in the wrong direction. And here's the shift. Happiness is not the absence of problems. Happiness is the ability to face problems with a strong heart and a resilient spirit. Happiness is not waiting for life to be perfect. Happiness is finding the gift inside the imperfections. It's recognizing that life is happening for you, not to you. Every challenge, every setback, every hardship has the power to grow you if you choose to see it that way. And you will never find true happiness by waiting for life to stop being hard. Life will always have ups and downs. But when you stop resisting what is and start embracing it, you unlock the freedom to be happy now. Happiness comes when you master your meaning, when you decide to interpret life in a way that empowers you instead of diminishes you. And most people never feel truly happy because they've forgotten that happiness is a decision. They think it's a destination. They think it's something they earn after years of effort. But happiness is available right now in this very breath if you choose it. And the way you choose it is by shifting your focus, changing your story, and living in alignment with your values. By growing, by giving, by connecting, by embracing life as it is while working toward what it can become. And the tragedy is not that happiness is rare, but that people make it rare. They place it on a pedestal far out of reach, when in reality it has always been and within them. The key is not to chase it, but to unleash it. To wake up every day and ask, what can I appreciate right now? How can I grow today? How can I give today? Because the secret to happiness is not what you get. It's who you become and what you contribute. And the people who live in that space of growth and giving, those are the ones who experience the kind of happiness that nothing and no one can ever take away. And would you like me to also create a 30-second powerful hook for this speech, starting with ladies and gentlemen, so it works as a strong opener for video or stage delivery? And the people who never feel truly happy often underestimate the incredible power of gratitude. Gratitude is the ultimate antidote to suffering, yet most people practice it only occasionally, like a ritual or a passing thought. They treat it as something to pull out once or twice a year rather than a daily habit. But gratitude isn't something you wait for when life looks good. It's the practice of appreciating what you already have, even in the middle of struggle. When you live in gratitude, scarcity disappears. You can't feel anger and gratitude at the same time. You can't feel fear and gratitude at the same time. You can't feel sadness and gratitude at the same time. Gratitude rewires your mind and body to experience happiness instantly. Yet most people never discipline themselves to live in that state. And happiness slips away because people are constantly comparing their behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Social media has magnified this like never before. People scroll, compare, and conclude that they're behind, that they're not enough, that they're missing out. They don't realize they're comparing themselves to a carefully curated illusion. They've forgotten that happiness has nothing to do with what others are doing and everything to do with the quality of their own inner life. The more you compare, or you rob yourself of joy. The more you measure yourself against others, the more you lose sight of your own journey. And most people never feel truly happy because they confuse busyness with purpose. They fill their days with tasks, appointments, errands, endless scrolling, and endless distractions. They are constantly in motion, but rarely in meaning. And no amount of busyness will ever substitute for fulfillment. If you want happiness, you must stop asking, what do I need to do today? And start asking, who am I becoming today? How am I living in alignment with what matters most to me? When your actions reflect your deepest values, life takes on a richness that busyness can never provide. And happiness escapes people because they live in the illusion of control. They want the world to bend to their expectations. They want other people to act exactly as they wish. They want every outcome to match their vision. And when life doesn't go their way, they suffer. But the truth is, the only control you have is over your own state, your own focus, your own actions. When you try to control everything, you set yourself up for frustration. When you let go of controlling the uncontrollable and focus on mastering yourself, you tap into a freedom and peace that can't be shaken. And another reason most people never feel truly happy is because they've lost the ability to be present. They're either reliving the past or worrying about the future. Their mind is consumed with regrets, what ifs, and anxieties. They live everywhere but here, and happiness can only exist in the now. Think about it. Life doesn't happen yesterday, and it doesn't happen tomorrow. Life is happening right now, in this moment. If you can't find joy in the now, you'll never find it in the future, because when the future arrives, it will also be now. The habit of postponing happiness keeps people locked in a cycle of waiting, never realizing that this very second is the only doorway to joy. And happiness feels elusive because people associate it with perfection. They believe they'll only feel good when life is free of problems, when everything lines up flawlessly. But perfection doesn't exist. There will always be challenges. There will always be imperfections. The happiest people are not those who live problem-free lives. The happiest people are those who see beauty in the imperfections, who embrace the journey as it is, who find meaning in the mess. And most people never feel truly happy because they're waiting for permission from society, from their family, from their friends, even from themselves. They wait for someone to validate them, to tell them it's okay to pursue what they love, to say they're worthy of joy. But you don't need permission to live fully. The moment you decide that you are enough as you are, the moment you decide to create your own standards, happiness begins to flow naturally. And they also miss happiness because they've forgotten how to play. Life becomes all about responsibility, obligation, seriousness. They lose the spirit of play that made them light up as children. But joy requires play. It requires spontaneity, laughter, silliness, creativity. Adults often suppress this because they think it makes them look unprofessional or irresponsible. But in truth, reconnecting with play is reconnecting with life itself. Without it, you live like a machine, always grinding, never glowing. And most people also anchor their happiness to things that are fragile. They tie it to wealth, beauty, status, possessions, things that can be taken away at any moment. That's why happiness feels so unstable. If your sense of joy depends on something outside yourself, you will always live in fear of losing it. Real happiness comes from anchoring yourself in things that cannot be taken away. Your growth, your integrity, your love, your capacity to give, your ability to find meaning in any situation. When happiness comes from within, no loss can destroy it. And the deeper truth is that most people never feel truly happy because they don't live in alignment with love. Love for themselves, love for others, love for life. They live in judgment, resentment, self-criticism, and disconnection. And without love, nothing else matters. You can achieve everything and still feel empty. But when you cultivate love, self-compassion, forgiveness, kindness, happiness flows effortlessly because love is the highest vibration of the human spirit. And happiness is also blocked by the stories people tell themselves. Stories like, I'm not good enough, I always fail, I'll never be loved, life is unfair. These stories shape their entire experience. They live not in reality, but in the narrative they've created about reality. If the story disempowers them, happiness becomes impossible. But the moment they rewrite their story, the moment they say, I am enough, I am growing, life is happening for me, their entire experience shifts. The story you tell yourself will either imprison you or set you free. And most people never feel happy because they undervalue progress. They expect giant leaps and breakthroughs, and they dismiss the small steps. But happiness comes from recognizing progress, even if it's just one small improvement each day. When you acknowledge growth, no matter how small, you feel alive. Happiness is not about reaching the destination. It's about celebrating the journey, about realizing that every step forward matters. And they also forget that happiness requires energy. If you neglect your body, if you eat poorly, sleep little, and move rarely, your chemistry works against you. You can't feel joy when your body is in a constant state of fatigue and imbalance. Happiness requires vitality. When you energize your body, you open the door to energizing your emotions. Most people tease. Or to think their way into happiness while ignoring the very foundation of their physical state. But your physiology is the quickest path to shifting how you feel. Move differently, breathe deeply, care for your body, and happiness becomes much more accessible. And another reason happiness eludes people is because they live in isolation. Humans are wired for connection. Without real, meaningful connection, happiness cannot thrive. Yet so many people settle for surface-level relationships. They are surrounded by people but feel alone. True joy comes from authentic connection, being fully seen, fully heard, fully loved. It comes from giving that same presence and love to others. Happiness grows when you step out of isolation and into community, when you allow yourself to truly connect without masks or walls. And most people also sabotage their happiness by clinging to the past. They carry grudges, regrets, guilt, anger. They replay old wounds like a broken record, never realizing that holding on to the past is like dragging a heavy chain behind you. You can't feel light, free, and joyful if you're carrying years of unresolved pain. Happiness requires forgiveness. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve freedom. Forgiveness is releasing yourself from the prison of the past so you can finally live in the present. And happiness also fades when people don't align with purpose. You can have comfort, pleasure, and even success, but if you lack purpose, you will always feel a void. Purpose is the reason you wake up with energy. Purpose gives meaning to your struggles. Purpose makes your life about something bigger than yourself. Without it, even victories feel hollow. With it, even struggles feel worthwhile. Purpose turns existence into fulfillment. And at the core, most people never feel truly happy because they haven't made the decision to be. They treat happiness as optional, secondary, something to think about later. They don't claim it as their birthright. But happiness is not a luxury. It's a necessity for a fully lived life. It's not something reserved for the lucky or the successful. It's available to anyone who chooses to align their focus, their values, their actions, and their meaning. Happiness doesn't wait. It's here, right now, ready to be chosen, ready to be created, ready to be lived. And would you like me to keep extending this into a third expansion of another 1,000 words so the flow keeps building stronger? Or do you want me to help you create a 30-second hook or next? And most people never feel truly happy because they've learned to suppress their emotions instead of using them as signals. They bottle things up, hide what they feel, or numb themselves with distractions. Food, alcohol, television, endless scrolling. They do this because they're afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of facing pain. But here's the truth. When you numb pain, you also numb joy. When you cut yourself off from feeling, you cut yourself off from living. Emotions are messengers. They're there to guide you, to show you what matters, to move you toward change. If you suppress them, you silence your own inner compass. Happiness comes when you embrace your emotions, when you allow yourself to feel fully, and then choose to use those feelings to empower rather than imprison you. And another reason happiness remains elusive is that people confuse achievement with fulfillment. Achievement is about success in the external world. What you do, what you earn, what you prove. Fulfillment is about success in the internal world. Who you are, how you feel, how you connect. Achievement without fulfillment is the ultimate failure because you can achieve everything society praises and still feel empty inside. Happiness requires shifting the focus from what you get to who you become. If you focus only on achievements, you'll forever be chasing the next one. But if you focus on becoming the kind of person you admire, happiness becomes a natural byproduct. And people also stay unhappy because they're addicted to certainty. They want to know everything will work out exactly as planned. They want guarantees. But life doesn't come with guarantees. Life is uncertain by nature, and while certainty feels safe, too much of it creates boredom and stagnation. True joy requires variety, surprise, spontaneity. Happiness grows when you embrace uncertainty, when you lean into the unknown with courage and curiosity instead of fear. The happiest people are not those who have all the answers. They're the ones who find excitement in the adventure of discovery. And most people never feel truly happy because they've allowed fear to become their master. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of loss. They let fear shrink their lives until they're only living in a fraction of their true capacity. And here's the paradox. Happiness lives on the other side of fear. Every time you face a fear and move through it, you expand your freedom. Every time you let fear hold you back, you shrink your joy. Happiness requires courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. And another reason happiness escapes people is that they live with unmet needs but never take responsibility for meeting them. Every human being has needs for certainty, for variety, for love, for growth, for contribution. When these needs are ignored or unmet, happiness is impossible. The problem is many people expect others to meet their needs for them. They expect their partner, their boss, their family, society to provide the love, the validation, the growth they crave. But waiting for others to meet your needs leaves you powerless. Happiness comes when you take full responsibility for your own needs, when you decide to meet them in healthy, empowering ways rather than waiting for the world to hand them to you. And most people never feel truly happy because they live in a cycle of overthinking. They analyze, doubt, question, hesitate. Their mind runs nonstop, replaying G, the past, imagining the worst of the future, creating endless what-ifs. Overthinking paralyzes action, and action is the pathway to fulfillment. You cannot think your way into joy. You have to live your way into it. Happiness requires getting out of your head and into your life, trading endless thought for courageous action. And they also struggle with happiness because they attach their identity to suffering. For some, pain becomes familiar, even comfortable. They've lived with struggle for so long that they don't know who they are without it. They've built a story around being the victim, the struggler, the one who always has it harder. And as long as they hold on to that story, happiness will always feel foreign. Happiness requires a new identity, the identity of someone who overcomes, who grows, who thrives, who chooses joy no matter the circumstances. And another reason happiness is rare is that people underestimate the power of contribution. They chase happiness by asking, what can I get? But lasting joy comes from asking, what can I give? When you shift your focus from yourself to others, from accumulation to contribution, life takes on a deeper meaning. Giving doesn't just help others, it heals you. It reminds you that you matter, that you have value, that your life can touch and transform the lives of others. Contribution ignites a level of happiness that nothing material can match. And most people never feel truly happy because they cling to control of time. They live in a race, always feeling behind, always saying they don't have enough time. This creates constant stress, a sense of rushing, a feeling of inadequacy. But happiness doesn't come from controlling time. It comes from owning your priorities. You have all the time you need when you focus on what matters most. The happiest people are not those who have endless hours, but those who use their hours intentionally, who invest their energy in what truly fulfills them instead of wasting it on distractions and trivial pursuits. And happiness is also blocked when people confuse success with significance. Success is about accomplishment. Significance is about impact. Success can feed the ego, but significance feeds the soul. Many people chase success and feel empty because they've never pursued significance. The happiest moments of life often come when you know your presence mattered, when you know your actions created meaning for someone else. If you want to feel truly happy, stop chasing success and start creating significance. And most people never feel truly happy because they live as if life is permanent. They act as though they'll live forever, postponing joy, waiting for some day. But life is fleeting. Every moment is a gift that could be gone in an instant. When you forget your mortality, you take life for granted. When you remember it, you cherish each moment, each breath, each connection. Happiness grows when you live with urgency, when you stop postponing joy and start living it now. And another block to happiness is the obsession with perfection in relationships. People expect others to never disappoint, to never make mistakes, to always meet their expectations. But no relationship is perfect. Every human being is flawed. If you demand perfection from others, you will always be let down. Happiness comes from embracing the imperfections of others, from giving grace, from loving people as they are rather than how you wish they'd be. When you stop trying to fix others and start appreciating them, happiness in relationships flourishes. And most people never feel truly happy because they resist change. They cling to the familiar, even when it no longer serves them. They stay in jobs, relationships, habits, and environments that drain their soul because change feels scary. But happiness is impossible without growth, and growth requires change. Every breakthrough in joy comes from stepping into something new, from letting go of the old, from allowing yourself to evolve. Happiness comes when you stop resisting change and start embracing it as the path to becoming more of who you're meant to be. And they also lose happiness by forgetting the power of meaning. Events don't determine how you feel. Your meaning does. The same event can destroy one person and empower another. The difference is the story they attach to it. Most people attach disempowering meanings. This happened because I'm not enough. Life is against me. I'll never succeed. But if you shift the meaning, this happened to teach me, this happened to make me stronger, this happened to redirect me, happiness becomes possible even in the middle of challenge. Master your meaning and you master your happiness. And another reason happiness feels out of reach is that people trade authenticity for approval. They wear masks, say what others want to hear, act in ways that gain acceptance. But deep inside, they know they're not being true to themselves. And no amount of approval can compensate for self-betrayal. Happiness requires authenticity. It requires living your truth, even if it risks judgment. The freedom of authenticity creates a joy that no external validation can match. And at the core, most people never feel truly happy because they've forgotten the simplest truth. Happiness is a choice. Not once in a lifetime, not once when everything lines up perfectly, but in every moment. It's the choice to focus on what's beautiful instead of what's missing. It's the choice to grow rather than stay stuck. It's the choice to give instead of always taking. It's the choice to love instead of fear. The people who never feel happy are the ones who leave that choice to chance. The people who do feel happy are the ones who claim it moment by moment, day by day, until it becomes who they are. And would you like me to continue building this into a fourth expansion, another 1,000 words, so the speech grows into a full-length keynote? Or would you like me to shift into crafting the 30-second hook? Next. And most people never feel truly happy because they spend their lives chasing certainty in a world that is fundamentally uncertain. They want guarantees in their careers, their relationships, their health, their future. They crave predictability as if it will somehow bring peace. But in reality, certainty kills aliveness. Imagine a life where you knew every outcome before it happened. There would be no surprise, no growth, no excitement. The happiest moments of life often come from the unknown, from the spontaneous adventure, from the risk that could fail but also could set your soul on fire. The people who cling to certainty cling to safety, but they also suffocate joy. The people who feel truly happy are those who embrace uncertainty as a gift, who lean into the mystery, who recognize that life's magic comes from not knowing exactly what's next. And another reason happiness escapes so many people is because they measure their lives by the wrong yardstick. They measure by possessions, by accomplishments, by external validation, by comparison to others. But happiness isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in the depth of your experiences, the richness of your connections, the alignment with your values. When you measure yourself by superficial standards, you will always fall short. There will always be someone wealthier, prettier, more successful. But when you measure yourself by growth, by authenticity, by love, you begin to see that you already have more than enough. And most people never feel happy because they're waiting for their circumstances to change before they allow themselves to feel joy. They think, once I get out of debt, I'll be happy. Once I find the right partner, I'll be happy. Once I lose the weight, I'll be happy. But life doesn't work like that. If you don't train yourself to be happy now, you won't be happy then. Happiness is not a product of circumstances, it's a product of choices. When you make the decision to be happy, regardless of what's happening outside, your external world often begins to shift in your favor. Waiting for circumstances to change before choosing happiness is like waiting for the rain to stop before deciding to dance. You'll miss the dance of life itself. And happiness is also absent because people have lost touch with wonder. As children, everything was magical. A butterfly could mesmerize you, a puddle could entertain you, the stars could fill you with awe. But as adults, people become jaded. They stop noticing the little miracles all around them. They walk past sunsets without looking, rush through conversations without listening, and live days without really living them. But happiness requires wonder. It requires slowing down long enough to appreciate the beauty that has always been there. When you return to a state of wonder, life feels alive again, and happiness flows naturally. And most people never feel happy because they're addicted to outcomes. They tie their joy to the results of their efforts rather than to the process. They're only happy when they win, when they succeed, when everything goes their way. But life is not just about results, it's about the journey. Happiness comes from loving the process, from falling in love with the act of growing, the act of trying, the act of becoming. If you can only be happy when you succeed, you'll only feel joy in fleeting moments. But if you learn to love the process, you'll feel joy every single day, regardless of outcome. And another reason happiness seems out of reach is because people allow the voice of their inner critic to be louder than the voice of their inner champion. They constantly berate themselves, tell themselves they're not good enough, replay mistakes, and amplify flaws. And when you make yourself the enemy, happiness is impossible. You cannot bully yourself into joy. Happiness requires self-compassion. It requires silencing the critic and amplifying the encourager. It requires treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd give to someone you love. When you shift the way you speak to yourself, you shift the way you feel about yourself, and happiness becomes available again. And most people also lose happiness because they don't create space for stillness. They live in constant noise, constant motion, constant distraction. Their minds are cluttered, their schedules are overloaded, their lives are chaotic. But happiness thrives in presence, in stillness, in the quiet moments where you reconnect with yourself. Without stillness, you can't hear your own heart. Without stillness, you can't process, reflect, or appreciate. It's not about meditating for hours on a mountaintop. It's about creating space in your life where you can simply breathe, notice, and be. Stillness opens the doorway to happiness, and happiness is often absent because people have trained themselves to be problem seekers instead of possibility seekers. Their minds are conditioned to scan for what's wrong, what's missing, what's broken. And what you look for, you find. If you focus on problems, you will always find more problems. But if you focus on possibilities, you will find opportunities, solutions, and blessings. The happiest people are not those with the least problems. They're the ones with the greatest ability to shift their focus from problems to possibilities. And most people never feel truly happy because they haven't healed old wounds. They carry unresolved pain from their past into every present moment. Old betrayals, old failures, old regrets, they live today through the lens of yesterday. And as long as the past controls the present, happiness cannot survive. Healing is not easy, but it's essential. It's the act of releasing the grip of the past so you can embrace the fullness of today. Happiness is not about erasing the past. It's about no longer letting it define who you are. And another reason happiness eludes people is that they confuse distraction with fulfillment. They think if they stay busy enough, entertained enough, stimulated enough, they'll feel better. But distraction doesn't heal emptiness. It only hides it temporarily. Happiness requires depth, not distraction. It requires facing what's inside rather than avoiding it. It requires asking deeper questions. What truly matters to me? What brings me alive? What impact do I want to make? Without depth, life feels shallow, and shallow living cannot produce deep joy. And happiness is also blocked because people overvalue control and undervalue surrender. They fight life instead of flowing with it. They resist what is instead of accepting it. But resistance creates tension, and tension suffocates happiness. When you learn to surrender, to trust that life has its seasons, to release the need to control every detail, you create space for peace. Surrender is not about giving up. It's about letting go of the illusion of control and opening yourself to the possibilities you couldn't have planned. In that openness, happiness thrives. And most people never feel truly happy because they treat life like a checklist rather than a gift. They're always racing to the next milestone, checking off goals, moving faster and faster, thinking happiness lies at the end of the list. But life is not a checklist, it's a treasure. Every moment is precious, every breath is borrowed time, every connection is a miracle. When you shift from racing through life to savoring life, happiness ceases to be something you chase and becomes something you experience. And another reason, Pinus feels distant is because people forget that laughter is medicine. They take life so seriously, carry their burden so heavily that they forget to laugh